The city was always bustling, but on this particular day, it felt different. The air seemed thick with anticipation, as if the very fabric of reality was about to be altered. For writer Emily, this was more than just a feeling, she knew it was happening. Emily had always been fascinated by the concept of power and its effects on individuals. As a writer, she knew that words could change people's lives, but she never imagined that her own words would have the power to alter reality itself. It started with small changes. A sentence written in haste became stuck in the mind of a stranger, causing him to forget his daily routine. Another word scribbled in the margins changed the course of a conversation between two friends. These were just small, almost imperceptible shifts, but they left Emily feeling like she was on the cusp of something bigger. As she sat at her desk, staring blankly at her computer screen, Emily felt an overwhelming urge to create. The words began to flow effortlessly, as if guided by some unseen force. She wrote about hope and despair, love and loss, each sentence weaving together into a tapestry that seemed to pulse with life. The more she wrote, the more the world around her began to change. A storm brewed outside, its thunder shaking the windows of her small apartment. The wind howled like a pack of wolves, threatening to rip through the fragile walls. But as Emily's words continued to flow, the tempest subsided, leaving behind an eerie calm. People began to notice the changes too. Strangers who had once smiled at each other now looked on with indifference. Friends who had shared laughter just hours before were now standing alone in a crowded room. The world was shifting, and Emily knew it was her words that were driving the change. She wrote about dreams and nightmares, fears and triumphs. With every sentence, the world responded in kind. Buildings creaked and groaned, as if they too felt the weight of reality's shifting sands. Trees swayed in an unnatural rhythm, their leaves rustling with a language all their own. The very ground beneath Emily's feet seemed to tremble, as if it too was being reshaped by her words. And yet, despite the power that flowed through her fingers, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of responsibility that came with it. She knew that every word had the potential to heal or harm, and she was acutely aware of the delicate balance between creation and destruction. As the night wore on, Emily's writing grew more frantic. Words spilled onto the page in a mad rush, each sentence building upon the last like a fevered dream. The world outside seemed to be responding to her every whim, its very fabric being reshaped by her power. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. Emily's pen lay still on the paper, her breath caught in her throat. She looked around at the room she shared with no one, feeling like a stranger in her own life. The storm outside was gone, replaced by a cold stillness that seemed to weigh upon her very soul. The world had changed, but not as Emily had intended. Her words had created something new, something alive and breathing with its own power. And at the heart of it all was Emily herself, a writer transformed into a force of nature. As she sat there, surrounded by the silence of her apartment, Emily realized that she had become the very thing she wrote about: a creator, a shaper of reality itself. The weight of that responsibility settled upon her shoulders like a mantle, and she knew that she would never be able to go back to simply writing stories again. The city outside was quiet now, its inhabitants going about their daily lives without a care in the world. But Emily knew the truth, that every word had power, and that with great power came great responsibility. She looked down at her hands, feeling the rough texture of her pen nib between her fingers. And then, with a sense of trepidation, she began to write again.